Okay, good evening. It is 7 p.m. and so we will start our budget and bond information session. Thank you all for joining online. Thank you for those who have come in person. My name is Lucille Renwick. I'm president of the Board of Trustees for the New Rochelle Public Library. I am joined this evening with my colleagues. To my right and the audience's left is Corey Galloway, the vice president of the board. To my left and the audience's right is Rhiannon Navin, the secretary of the board. Corey is chair of the Buildings and Grounds Committee. Rhiannon is chair of the Budget and Finance Committee. Both committees are very important and very involved in both the budget and the bond. We will start off with an information overview from our director, Eugenia Shatov, and then we will follow that with a 40-minute Q&A, and I'll go over how we'll operate the Q&A when we get to that point. So I'll turn it over to Eugenia. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Tonight is really about one thing. It's about our library and it's about our library's future. This presentation, it's not just about a building project. It's about what kind of community we want New Rochelle to be for the next 50 years. So before I begin, I wanted to note something important. The presentation really includes a lot of detail and data on all of the slides. The full presentation is actually available on the website as well as all of the supporting documentation. We also wanted to make sure that there was plenty of time for discussion and questions. We've received questions in advance as well as any questions that you may have as a result of the presentation or information that you would like answered or clarified. So we're intentionally leaving significant space at the end for that conversation. So let me paint a picture for you. So the library is not a shrine for the worship of books. It is not a temple where literary incense must be burned or where one's devotion to the bound book is expressed in ritual. A library should be the delivery room for the birth of ideas, a place where history comes to life. And this quote by Norman Cousins, an American political journalist and author, really is an example of what grounds this entire effort. When we talk about our library, we are talking about one of the few remaining spaces in our community that is free, that is open to everyone, and is shared by everyone. And we, as library workers, we see that every day. We see a child reading their first book. We see a family discovering the library for the first time as part of their weekly routine. This is all what the library already does. And the question for us really is, how do we support our important work for the next generation? So this proposal is a result of many years of planning. It is not a rushed decision. And more importantly, it reflects something much bigger. It's a recognition that the library needs reinvestment to continue serving the community at the level that New Rochelle expects and deserves. We also need to be honest about where we are today. The building has not had a major renovation since 1979. Over time, systems age, spaces become less flexible, infrastructure needs renewal. Like any public building, ongoing investment is what keeps it safe, it keeps it functional and welcoming. It's not optional work, it's necessary work. So this proposal focuses on the building itself. And there are many examples here of the physicality of the building. I'll give an example just from today and yesterday and probably tomorrow. We had to close our third floor due to temperature because we do not have an HVAC system that is responsive to temperature changes or have the capacity to be able to modulate itself where areas have more need of heating or cooling. So there are many kind of core systems that are reaching the end of their useful life, but at its core, this project is also about creating a library that reflects how people actually use it today. And modern libraries, they're, yes, about books, but they're not just about collections. They're about connection. They're places where people learn, work, gather, and access opportunities. So in terms of what the bond will fund, um, there are many examples of the different types of aspects of the project, as you can see on this slide. I think it's also very important to point out that all of this commitment to defining what the bond will fund has been through hard and prudent work by the Board of Trustees, the various committees, and making sure that this project is well thought out and really sticks to the scope and to the ideas and to the plan as stated. The question of what the bond funds will be used for, which is what they will not be used for, as you can see on the slide, as well as the community impact. So it's important to remember that many of the spaces in the library support early literacy, curiosity. They help children build confidence. We see loneliness is an issue for many seniors, and the library offers a place of connection. For teens, we hear something consistently that they want a space of their own. They want a space where they can focus, that they can feel a sense of belonging, not just a place to kind of pass through after school. And all of this, the budget for the project, what the funds will be used for, as well as the community impact, has been part of this extended planning process. So in terms of the different scenarios that were considered, I don't want to go into a lot of detail. This is historic information for you, but it does show the work and the diligence of the Board of Trustees in terms of choosing a scenario that would preserve the legacy of the building while making it more accessible, making it more sustainable and ready for the future, which is how we arrived at the project that is being put forth on the ballot. So we don't have final architectural drawings yet, and that's intentional. So the next few slides show examples of the kinds of spaces that can be created, but I think it's really important to remember that the reason we don't have finalized drawings yet is because we want to allow for community input. We want to protect taxpayer dollars, and we want to keep the design flexible as the project moves forward. And that being said, an important part of getting the green light and having this project move forward is the ability to really engage with residents about the actual planning process and soliciting feedback. It's an important part of the next step of the process for us. So 3 big takeaways: full ADA access, honoring the original architecture of the building, as well as improving the sustainability, which has additional positive financial gains for the library with rising costs for energy. 3 important points that were brought up in the condition study previously that was part of the decision-making process. So the total cost of the project is $55,016,610. There's the total renovation area, and the tax impact for homeowners equates to about $17 a month for the average homeowner. That's about $204 per year. And the tax impact at the earliest is anticipated to be 2028. So we had discussed the final drawings. And as I stated, there are set and measured next steps if and when the bond passes, which includes a large community engagement initiative to solicit input and really design a library for the entire community. So before we move on to questions, I want to briefly address the first item on the ballot, the 2026-2027 proposed budget. So this is separate from the capital bond that we've been discussing. The budget supports the day-to-day operations of the library, staffing, programs, materials, and services. So the total proposed budget is $7.665 million, up from $7.377 million of an increase of about 3.75%. For the average homeowner, the annual library tax would increase to by about $17 a year. A way to think about this is that the bond is investing in the physical building for the long term, and the budget is sustaining the services that people rely on every day. Together, they both support the present and the future of the library. So some more notes about our oversight and accountability. And we encourage everyone to stay engaged, to ask questions, to learn more. We have an additional session scheduled for April 28th at 7 p.m. And that is also available, going to be available online via Zoom, as well as here at the library. And this presentation, it is only part of the conversation. We wanted to make sure that people have the information that they need to make an informed decision. We have already received a number of questions and are going to be updating the FAQ that is available on our website, reflecting the new batch of questions that we've received. This is a very important decision. It's not just a vote about a building. It's a decision about the kind of moments that happened here at the library. It's a decision about the future and investing within our library building, and really the idea and the thought of what kind of library do we want to have? What kind of library, what kind of community do we want to be? So Thank you very much for listening to my portion of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Board President Lucille Renwick to facilitate questions.
Thanks, Eugenia. We'll wait and make sure that we can get the lights back on before it takes a while. Well, I think that's more of a reason for Bond to help us with the lighting system as well. So we don't have somebody having to run back and forth to an antiquated theater box. Great, thank you.
Maybe not that
Well,
bright.
well, we can definitely see everyone. So thank you again, Eugenia, for that presentation. Let me go through just the format for the Q&A. And then I will briefly turn it over to Rhiannon as Chair of the Finance Committee to make a few remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions. So we've got about 40 minutes for the Q&A, maybe a little bit more. The library closes at 8 p.m., so we'll take our last question at that time, and so we may go a little bit over. We ask that if you're signing up for questions and you sign up twice, we'll just do one question per person. If you are making a statement, we'll give you 2 minutes. If you're just asking a question, we just ask you to make the question brief so that we can make sure that we provide comprehensive and robust answers so that those who are watching on Zoom get a full understanding, as well as everyone in the audience. With that, we'll keep time just in terms of the statements remarks, and I will now turn it over to Rhiannon before we open it up for Q&A. If there are no questions from the audience, we do have prepared questions that we will go through to provide answers to the previously submitted questions that we will go through and provide answers for that. So, Rhiannon.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us and coming for more information about our budget and about our capital improvement bond. I wanted to add a couple of things to what Eugenia already said. Hopefully it's not repetitive, but I just wanted to give the perspective from the board and specifically the Budget and Finance Committee, how we arrived at this budget and at our decision to go out with this capital improvement bond this year. I just wanted to quickly add to, I'll start with the budget. I'll start where Eugenia ended. I just want to make sure to emphasize that the 2026-2027 budget just really reflects a very careful balance. And we're very conscious of the everyday financial hardships and difficulties that our New Rochelle residents, our taxpayers have. And so we're very mindful of that. We've prepared a very as lean as possible budget that still addresses the current and unfortunately rising operating costs of a library of this size. And so, as Eugenia has mentioned, the library the budget this year is $7,665,000 and change, which is a 3.75% increase. Or an extra $343,661. That comes to about an increase for the average homeowner in New Rochelle of $19.44. And that comes out to about $1.62 a month or 5 cents a day. And I just want to emphasize that really a large percentage of this increase in the budget comes from salary and benefit increases to library staff, which is really not something that we have any control over. And the staff members are really working hard, providing essential services every single day, and we're making sure that they're compensated, obviously, accordingly. And besides really these necessary increases, there are very few changes and increases to the budget. And we were very thoughtful about and what we included. There are very few adjustments, such as contracted services. Those are our security guards outside that keep us and the patrons safe every single day. Tax and debt-related services, legal and audit costs. As you may know, this is the first year that the library conducted its first ever independent audit, and there are just costs associated with us, but it's a really important tool for us to have financially as we move forward. And so I just wanted to make sure that, New Rochelle, with over 750,000 visitors every year, which is the second largest library in Westchester County, we are underfunded, and we are very, very conscious in the financial decisions that we make. I think we said a lot about the bond. I want to take up too much space, so let's start with questions.
Thank you, Rhiannon, for providing that additional context. I'll open it up if there are any questions that anyone in the audience has. We have somebody with a wireless mic, and he will come to you so you can ask a question. Just raise your hand. Oh, we have, and she will come to you. Yeah, just raise your hand high. There you go. Here you go.
How are you going to advertise to get out the vote? Because it's only a month away and I haven't seen any, posters outside. I haven't gotten any flyers in the mail. If I wasn't a friend of the library, I would not know about this vote. So how are we going to get the people out there to vote?
Thank you. That's a really great question. In addition to, and I will turn it over to Eugenia as well, who can talk about the budget mailers. But in addition to the information sessions, we are actually going to a number of different neighborhood organizations and community groups to speak to residents. Corey and I just had the pleasure of going to Resident Park earlier this week. It feels like it was earlier this week to talk about the bond and the budget. We'll be doing a lot of that. And in addition, I'll just allow Eugenia to say a bit more about how we're getting the word out.
Yeah, so I would also say that we have a mailer that is going to all residents that will be forthcoming that provides information not only about our budget vote, but also about this important bond vote. And it was very important to us. This was a new initiative that we actually put forth last year to really put out a robust newsletter to residents to be able to make informed decisions. So that is forthcoming, and we looked at the final proof earlier this week. So that should be hitting mailboxes shortly. We also have been actively putting out information consistently on our website as well as on our social media channels. We also have an e-newsletter that has a tremendous readership of several thousand. So we are using all of our channels in order to try to get information out about this. We're also taking the show on the road and going to visit different groups, and as Lucille, as President Renwick stated, going to different neighborhood associations. So if you would like to have us present to the friends or any other groups, we'd be more than willing to come and help provide more information. And as I stated, this presentation itself is also right now being streamed on via Zoom. We will post this on the website and it will go on our YouTube channel.
Thanks, Eugene.
Good evening. I'm Tom Leghorn. I had the honor of sitting in your seat for 15 years as a trustee of the library. This bond issue, I see you have it as $17 per month for the average taxpayer. But my question is, at some point, you're going to draw down on this whole bond or a good portion of it. And what is the anticipated debt service to the library? Because my quick back of the envelope calculations is that it's going to be a massive increase far beyond your 3% change that will go out to the voters. And unless the law has changed dramatically, if that falls twice, you're locked into an austerity budget that's not going to cut it. So I want to, what are those numbers and what thinking and planning is going in to deal with that?
Okay, thank you for that question. I think it's a really important one, and giving us the opportunity to provide that context will really help for the voters as they go to make their vote. Eugenia is best will handle that. Thanks.
Yeah, so that's a good question from somebody who obviously understands how bonds work. So the full tax impact, as well as the projected annual debt service, is available on the website. So we did receive projections for that. And that is something that is actually under discussion right now in terms of our partnership with the school district, and being a school district public library, the school district bonding on our behalf, placing this bond on their ballot. That's something that is currently being discussed and will be further discussed and determined. The good thing and really a great planning aspect of this is that because we are planning so far in advance and really are working with great professionals who are guiding us every step of the way. This is an aspect of it, because we're not looking at actually issuing the bond potentially, or a ban potentially, until 2028. This is exactly a question that has been raised, but we have time to figure it out and negotiate it before we actually need to start the debt service. So it's something, if you, and I can certainly share it with you, the projections are available on the website, and kind of the manner of the bookkeeping aspect of it is something that's being discussed with the school district, and we have some time to be able to determine kind of the best way to do it. As you said, that because potentially it could be, it would appear differently. It could be, shocking, or so we want to make sure that we not only are deciding kind of the best way to do it, but that we're communicating that transparently with our community, our taxpayers, you as residents.
Well, did you want to say something?
No.
No, I just want to thank you. My only response is, I think that's information that should be out there now, not after you're asking us to vote on it.
Yeah, so in our conversations with the school district, because this wasn't even going to, because we're not even talking about issuance until 2028. We confirmed with the school district that there is no issuance in this current fiscal year. So the bond, the debt services, none of that is reflected in any of their budgeting. Sorry? I'm sorry. Yeah.
I think it might be.
Yeah. And the estimated projections can be put out.
That's a good, basically, the short answer is that is a good point, and that is helpful information for the voters to know. And thank you for sharing that with us. You need the microphone though, so that, because this is a public meeting. And then we'll pass it on for another question if someone has.
My point is that I think, Eugenie, I understand your point, but you're in essence asking the people to write you a blank check to be filled in when you decide what to do with it. And I like to know beforehand, and that's why I like to have all the numbers and see what the debt service is exactly in the percentage and what is the negative impacts before I vote. I think maybe this vote's a little premature. That's all.
Yeah, no, and I would say, to be clear, we're not asking for a blank check. If you look at the tax projections, it has a full breakdown of the annual debt service. It shows it potentially starting in 2028. I just don't want to sit here and kind of list, years and principal pay down. It is all in the projection, the debt service table, which is on the website. So you could break down the interest payment, the principal payment starting in 2028, the total debt service payment, the change year over year. It's all there.
I want to make sure that we say this on the record, and as a former trustee, I'm sure that you're aware, and that the public needs to be aware that as fiscal stewards, it is our due diligence to ensure that if we're going to go out with a bond, that we do our research, that we make sure that we are looking at every aspect of it, and that it would there would never be a time when we are asking any voters to write a blank check, which is why Eugenia has done quite a due diligence in terms of mapping out the debt service and why we are noting that there would be no tax impact to voters until 2028. What this does is it is asking the voters for permission to move forward with this vote, with this bond. And it's really important to note that this building is nearly 50 years old and has not had a significant renovation in that time. As Eugenia mentioned earlier, in her overview and her information session, it was because the HVAC is such a dated system, the third floor had to be closed today to patrons because the temperature was too high. We have unpredictable weather and we have a very dated system. And this is a library that serves as a cooling center. And so this infrastructure is important, and providing updated space and opportunities for people to gather in this community as a community hub is also important. I'll open it up for another question. It's up at the top.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is not a money question, but on one of the charts where you had envisioned the children's floor, which looked like it was expanded space, are you also considering, after this is done, closing the children's library in the middle of New Rochelle, or is this just going to be a secondary space for children?
I'm going to just note that the short answer to that would be no, we're not planning to close. You're talking about Huguenot Children's Library. We would never close. That's a gem of New Rochelle. The longer answer, I think, is best answered by our library director.
So no, we are not closing ever our gem, the Huguenot Children's Library. What I can say is that our building, our current building, is of a good size. We have a lot of square footage. The way in some of the space, the way that some of the space is allocated is built on the premise of a library that was built in 1979. So the way in which the library is used now, which we see every single day, it's families, it's kids, it's parents, it's caregivers, it's grandparents, it's nannies, it's daycares, it's schools. The children's department and all of the amazing programming that they do, their wonderful collections, takes up kind of a small portion of the floor plan. And this goes back to the question of when would planning even really begin from an architectural standpoint. We can't sit here today and say what it's going to look like, but the premise holds true that we have a really, really heavily used children's space, children's room. We already have a lot of really beautiful work that's been done in there. We have our children's garden, which was just a grant that was completed through our foundation, through ARPA money. We have a lot of really great things going on there, but there are opportunities for the future for our children's room.
There another question on the, oh, okay. Oh, wait, we just have one in the front, sorry.
I'm Jimena Francella, resident of New Rochelle for close to 20 years. And I've been able to see, the remarkable work that the library has done, during this time. All the programs that each year are increasing, and that you are doing the best that you can to service the community. And I think that it's really important what you're proposing, because we could have remarkable services, but you need to look at the infrastructure. And as you have clearly said, it's been 50 years that nothing has been done with, with the structure of the library. So I think, this bond is very important. What I also want to caution you, I'm a member also of another planning board, is the cost of construction, that it increases. So that's something that you're going to have to keep in mind, that whatever is being proposed now is not going to be the same cost in 2028. So I think that's important for the community to keep in mind. And, thank you very much for all the work that you're doing, for the library and for the community.
Thank you, Jimena. I think it's important actually to touch on the cost of construction and the rise and what we did in terms of planning for that. So I'm just going to ask my colleague Corey to.
So because we're so far out, to your point on construction, if you look at our numbers and everything's made public, we have a contingency of 20%, which accounts for, rise. We have a contingency of 20% in our numbers, which accounts for rising costs, gas, lumber, whatever it may be. So we're aware that we're very far out. The plan for this is an 8-year plan. So we've put in contingencies to make sure that we're accounting for rising costs that we can't forecast.
I think it's important to also know that we're also working diligently and would be working diligently to stay on budget. And as chairs of the Finance Committee, Rhiannon has worked hard on that. Do you want to?
Yeah, I just want to say that we're as a board are really very confident about these numbers that we're putting out. We're working with professionals or have to come up with this very detailed proposed estimate, and it was based on a very thorough conditions use study that was done in 2019. And like Corey already mentioned, there's a huge contingency built in for that. I also want to make sure, just to give the information that we are really also exploring any supplemental, any additional methods of funding, any grants. We really, Eugenia is absolutely excellent in that. We go after every single grant and we get really a lot of additional help. And one great example of that is a grant that we just received from our 4 state legislators, over $1 million that goes towards the roof, which obviously is just a drop of a bucket, but it goes to show that we as a board and our director are really, we're kind of scrappy about this, and we're not just coming out and saying, hey, pay for this. We're really exploring all methods of funding for this too.
There was another question. The person who had raised your hand in the back, did you still have a question? Nope. Okay. All right. So what we'll do is we will begin to answer. And if someone does have another question, you're welcome to raise your hand. But in the meantime, what we'll do is we will take some of the questions that were submitted prior and trying to address those to provide some additional information. Oh, can you not hear me? I'm often never told that I don't speak loud enough. So thank you for that. And that comes as a surprise. I'm sure my children would disagree, but so yes. So what I said was that while we are waiting, and in the meantime, if someone has a question, please feel free to raise your hand and we will come to you. In the meantime, however, there were questions that were submitted beforehand, and so we want to make sure that we addressed some of those. So I do not want to hog the microphone. I will read out a question and then I will share the microphone with one of my colleagues. But let's start with a common question that many people will have asked us in various conversations, and it is, how did the board settle on $55 million as the amount of the bond, which is a very good one. And I will just start by saying this didn't come out of thin air. It came out of a conditions use study that was done earlier in 2019. And then it considered a number of different costs. But let me actually turn it over to Corey, who can talk a bit more about that.
So I know we've just put this out for a vote, but we've been working on this for a long time. So it's been about 7 years that we've engaged with the community. We've gone through a lot of, we want to hear what the community has to say. We've had the community speak up at a time where the rumor was we would be working with a developer. And we actually heard the community and they said, we don't want that. We'd like to tell us what it costs. And we would come together as a community to keep the ownership of the library, which is what the direction we were given. So we are responding to that direction from the community. When it comes to the bond breakdown, Eugenia discussed this. Hard costs were 30 million. Contingencies were 10.5 million. Soft costs were 13.8 million. The total bond of $55 million closely matches that estimate. We sized the bond to cover the actual work and not to have any numbers that were padded. The estimate was given to us from a professional group, Calgy, who's pretty strong brand name in construction. So we're confident on their ability to produce the numbers. And we've had a lot of back and forth with them just on challenging some of their theories. But we feel like we've gotten to a place where we settled it on the $55 million, which is not a strictly infrastructure, and it's not, our dream budget of shutting down the library and opening up to a new library. What we decided to do is have the library go in stages as we do this project. So that's where we came up with that number. Thank you.
And I just want to add that last point that Trustee Galloway made is that it was very important during the planning process to focus on staging. The board committed to not closing the library. And so that requires a lot of planning. And ultimately, we could not have a project that would close the library that would minimize or restrict services. And so that is also a part of the total number that was ultimately developed, was a phased approach.
Thanks. We have a question.
Hello. My question is geared to the staging of it and the fact that I think I understand that the taxes won't impact the residents until 2028. But what I'm curious about is if you're having problems with the HVAC right now, if the bond passes, will that be fixed right now, or will that have to wait till 2028? And what about the other deficiencies that are cited as being so important, for example, the roof and whatever else? When would those be fixed? Not until after 2028? I'm confused.
Thank you for that question. So first, as Eugenia had mentioned and Rhiannon had mentioned, we were fortunate enough to get a little over $1 million in a grant from our state legislators, and that was to work on our HVAC system and our roof. As I'm sure that you all know, that's not enough to cover all of that, but that doesn't mean that we will not begin to try and cover that. I'll pause now and turn it over to Eugenia to add more and provide more context, but I don't think that we would want to leave people without working systems to the best of our ability. Eugenia? Can you not hear? Did you not hear that? Oh, I'm sorry. We would want to, it is up. Okay, I just have to speak into it. And if I could remember what I just said, but basically we're trying to make sure that we are responsible for this building and would not want to leave anything that is so near disrepair. And we've been making patches, but let me stop and turn it over to Eugenia.
So you bring up a great question, which is where I kind of have my construction hat along with my library director hat. So what is, as public servants, as public librarians, as public library workers, what is absolutely always most important to us is staying open. We recognize the vital part that we play in helping our community, in everyday lives of the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who walk through our doors annually. So in terms of what would happen, so if and when this project is approved, that's when planning starts. That's when the public input and all of the data gathering and feedback begins. That helps then inform the planning all along the way. So we, for example, are currently undergoing a reassessment of the condition study. So the condition study, although extremely useful and detailed, it's also available on our website. There's a full book of hundreds of pages of pictures. Things have changed in the 6 years since the condition study was done. So we are updating that. And in the meantime, we would not want to invest in Band-Aids if we didn't have to. But ultimately, if there is a plan, for example, President Renwick discussed roof and HVAC, right? Those are systems that ideally are planned together, right? And so to be able to do that, we would not want to embark upon having that project done until we were fully prepared for it. And as a mitigating question, there are absolutely ways in which systems can be assisted in kind of limping along. They tend to not be cost effective or energy effective. But that's what we would do to stay open until such time as we could have the projects completed and the full roof redone, the full HVAC redone. We also have had some recent repairs, and we're scheduling repairs for our HVAC right now to get it ready for this future cooling season. So there are temporary measures that can be done, but that's not sustainable. So that's why we're putting all this planning into this project as being the next step for us, because continuing to have Band-Aids with no plan, that can't be the way that we run the library. That can't be the way that we plan for the future of NRPL.
I just want to quickly add to that too, because I really don't want to sugarcoat kind of the situation of the building. We are in a situation where we are nervous about the HVAC system, where we're nervous about the roof. We had the conditions use study done 2019. There were some measures discussed to address the condition of the building. Then COVID hit, right? So we are definitely behind. We're being caught on our back foot. We're now in a position where we have fantastic library leadership and a board that is here to stay and that is really committed to seeing this project through. Which is why it's so imperative that we pass this bond, right? We've been kicking the can down the road for quite some time. All of the, as we've mentioned, the critical infrastructure has passed its useful life. And so, yes, there are measures that we can take until we can really tackle this project. But the sooner we do that, the better. So, which is why we need to pass this bond. So we have funds to Band-Aid. Until then, we're going to do our best to keep this building open and running until that happens. But really, it's a situation that needs to be addressed, and it can't be addressed in years from now. It has to be addressed now.
Thank you. I just want to add an additional point. Last summer, when just before Eugenia started, we were making patchwork repairs to the HVAC. And as Eugenia said, these are not sustainable. They are patchwork repairs because we knew that we needed to ensure that we could be a cooling center for New Rochelle. We're a critical cooling center in the city for the residents and also patrons who live nearby. And we've continued to make patchwork repairs, but that can last but so long. And I'm sure that every homeowner knows that you could do a patchwork, and at a certain point, you have to make a commitment to a considerable investment, or else your building will not be able to be sustained for a longer period of time.
So in addition to that, back in, I'm just going through my notes from 2023, we looked at the HVAC, and Carrier is our HVAC provider. So we have a service contract with Carrier, and Carrier was actually keeping the systems running. But every year, Carrier say, you guys got to make a repair. You got to make more than just the repairs. You got to look at rehauling this entire system. They've been able to actually repair, but they know that this has reached its shelf life. So I will say that Carrier, I'm looking at an email from 2024 where, you know, they were just constantly on top of making sure the HVAC was working.
Is there another question? There's a question.
Hi, well, thank you for all the work you're doing. My question is, how much of this is being shared with the public? I'm hearing a lot about mitigating the tax burden and so on and so forth. And yes, it's a lot of money. But do people really understand that we're looking at closing the doors of the building at some point if it's not safe or if it is not functional or all of the above? I mean, how much of this, an even presentation to the public, that we're in danger of losing the downtown gem of New Rochelle, during COVID, this was an oasis. People were parked in the parking lot for the Wi-Fi. There were mobile vehicles going out and delivering hotspot and laptops and everything else. This place has a tradition of stepping up, of just meeting the needs of the community, whatever they are. And there will come a point where we can't do that. And I say we because this is my library, so it's our library, we're not just laying a tax burden on the public. It's, hey, our library is about to disintegrate. Do we, it's the carrot and the stick. It's the rational and the emotional together. Is that how you start to convince people? And also, where is the outreach when it comes to voting on the school board? In the school board elections, the outreach has to be in the North End where people vote, so how much is happening in these places to really make people aware and really gain support that way? So if you can get a question out of that, good luck.
I did get a question out of that. Can you all hear me now? Am I okay? I'm speaking correctly into the mic. I really appreciate that question. And before I turn it over to Rhiannon, who, as head of the Finance Committee, has been doing a great deal of work on the bond. I just want to note that I ran 5 years ago because of what I saw this library do during COVID, because I saw how much it stepped up. Libraries have always been really important to me. I think to all of us, that's why we serve on the library board. In particular, it showed up in a way that our community needed it to. And I guess we're saying, we're asking for folks to just consider this bond in terms of that. I do want to make sure that Rhiannon has a chance to address the question in terms of how we get the word out.
Yeah, and I think I heard two questions maybe. I think the first one was, are we being clear enough with the public what the actual condition of this building is? And I think that we are trying to find the right balance or strike the right balance between reassuring the public that the gem is not going away, that we will continue to do our very best to continue the services, to continue the programming, to be creative about how we reach people, all those things. Because we're committed to doing that, we're going to do that one way or another. And at the same time, we also want to make sure that we get the point across, like, we can't kick the can down the road any longer. Like, this needs to happen, right? And should have it happened sooner? Yes. A lot of things happened that made COVID, a changeover in library leadership, so we're now, like I said, at a point where we're really able to do that. But it's a tricky way to talk about it, right? We want to make sure you understand it's really important that we do it. At the same time, don't worry, the library is not going anywhere. The library is also not closing down while we're conducting this massive project. Doors will not close one day because of it. So that's a commitment that we're making. And then in terms of outreach, I mean, Eugenia spoke earlier about how we're reaching out and how we're trying to reach all the different audiences in New Rochelle. And to your point, the North End is a very important piece of that. You know, there's a lot of very active voters who come and participate in that election, and we're very aware of that. So we're really exploring a lot of options, having a lot of conversations. We're going up there. I'm meeting with the JCC tomorrow to make sure we have an information session there. We're reaching out to the synagogues. We're reaching out to community leaders. And so we really are not we're not letting any stones unturned. Is that it? Yeah. That is not a German expression. So I just, okay. We are very aware that this is not something that we're throwing on the back of a ballot and hoping that it passes. We are trying to explore every avenue and make sure we talk to as many people as possible about it.
The other thing I wanted to say is that this is really a once in a 50-year project. So this is our comprehensive multi-year plan to address all of the key infrastructure issues in the building. And yeah, we're talking about HVAC, but accessibility, you know, if the building were built today, we don't have enough bathrooms. The third floor's not sprinklered. Like there's a lot of code compliance type things that in newer building would be addressed. So what we've worked on is a plan that will future-proof the library building for the next 50 years. We need it to be flexible. We need it to be green and energy efficient. We need it to be welcoming to all of our residents. And that's what this project really is. It's a 50-year project. This is once in a generation. And that's the other thing. Like it's not, when we talk about projects of that scale, like you said the library, it's your library and it's all of our library. We're also talking about the library for future generations, the kids now, people growing up, people moving in, people staying, all of those people. That's what this plan is.
I want to be mindful of time. It is 7:57, which means we have 3 minutes until the library closes. So I want to make sure that we still have an opportunity to get 1 or 2 more questions. Okay. I do not see a question out there with anyone's hand raised. So I want to just use this opportunity for a couple of things. One, just as we are having this information session tonight, and we'll have another information session on April 28th, if this bond were to pass, we also would want to ensure that the community was involved and operating with full transparency. Like this, just as we want to ensure that we are transparent with the costs of the bond, of the debt service, of all of the elements and aspects of what it would cost. He's not fanning me, it's just a fly that's been up here. To what it was cost. Transparency is key, and that is what will happen throughout the entire process from beginning to end. We want the community's input. The same way that we got the input for our strategic plan and we put our strategic plan together, reaching out to the community, having them come in is the same way we want to ensure the community's voice is heard going forward if this bond were to pass. That is not something that we take lightly. The public input is key during the entire extended planning phase. The board would hold regular public meetings, make sure that there were updates for the project as we go along. And that goes beyond just our monthly board meetings. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear. I want to thank you all for joining us online. I want to thank you all for taking the time to come down to the library. And I will just, I'll just close with this because I think it's important to note. And that is that May 19th is one day. But as Eugenia mentioned, what happens on that day, that shapes New Rochelle for the next 50 years. It shapes New Rochelle for a generation. I think that's really important to consider. And that the vote is not an opinion. It is a decision on what kind of community will continue to be, that we will be a future forward library, that we will provide the services to our patrons and residents of the city that they deserve, and provide the community space so that we can have even more folks come and gather here. And yeah, I want to just double down on what we said in terms of our fiduciary responsibility, that every dollar will be spent well and spent responsibly, that we will be accountable for every decision that we make and ensure that the public knows about those decisions that we are making. And as a result, we hope and we look forward to a really transformed and enduring library that excites the public as much, when it is refurbished, as this library did in 1979, when it was opened and modern and kind of state of the art then. So we believe that this is what this community deserves. And we look forward to sharing more information with the public in neighborhood meetings. And if you'd like us to come to your neighborhood meeting, please contact the library and let us know. And we also invite folks back on April 28th for another information session. So thank you all again, and have a good night.